Big time crickets. And it just got bigger, folks. Ran across some stuff here. It was a news article that came through that caused me to do some quick rethinking and rechecking of a condition that I've just been watching. I don't get too involved in it. You don't hear me talk about it too much, although I hit the guy pretty good there last year because he popped his head up and threw a little bitty hole, and I figured we better whack it quick. And we're going to be playing whack-a-mole with a whole lot of stuff here as the world moves forward and descends into the stinking abyss probably pretty rapidly from here on out. That I did some quick research on a sinful news article. Another inconsistency. I've told you to look for the anomalies. Use the anomalies to guide your searches. I'm trying to make sense of all this nonsense. It's not nonsense to something. It's 100% nonsense. Can't be an accident here, I guess, is my point on that. But we've had crickets forever, it seems. And there's always a small group of people that are not. And sometimes, I guess, the cycles are that they rise up and they do something sufficient to overthrow the status quo, just long enough to have it thrown down again over time. It's really a fascinating view of what's going on. And at some point, in the thinking of all this, you consider that there's it's all everything's predestined. Like Shakespeare saying, the world's a stage and you're going to play your part in it. You start seeing that that's maybe a real reality. Hard not to see it that way. And it's hard not to see it that way, again, from my perspective, when you see everything written down before it happens, maybe not in the words that we might use, but in the code. Remember, they use statutory code. It's all in code. It's, if we can use the word occulted, that you start being able to break down that code. You got your little magic decoder ring. Now, a long time ago, someone laughed at me and said, "You're the only guy I know that has the magic decoder ring for this stuff." Well, I had I had a magic decoder ring for something, and now as I keep pushing forward and keep looking at all this and trying to keep it together, that decoder ring has got a bunch of different encryption keys in it. And I can't decrypt everything, but it's certainly given me an insight, at least enough that I think I know I'm doing something behind the woodshed here for y'all. But whether or not that's received is a whole other thing. But I'm not here to just tell stories. I'm not a storyteller. I wish I was, because I think people would listen a little bit more. In fact, as I'm speaking about right now, I realize you don't even know what I'm talking about here. I'm hanging you out on a subject matter that has always been writing in my mind, and for a long time, and trying to figure out, really, like I said, what happened to America 3 decades ago, folks. For me, 3 decades. I got the rose-colored glass left across my face, and I was believing in America. I believed in all of that. And I kind of still do. I still believe that there's something there. And I see that as I explain the bits and pieces in the mining law. That when you look at the purpose for the Declaration of Independence and the purpose for government, it's to protect us as the overarching protection and to mitigate between ourselves, because we're not always going to get along. And that seems fair enough. And I could see in the mining law, which is just a property law. It's a property disposal code that puts the government second place once that happens. And it obligates the government the duty and obligation to protect what it is in second place to do in trust as a trustee. And the ones sitting in the offices are in trust to do that for us. And those trusts are supposed to be having some kind of accountability. That we can see, at least, the rudiments of something that was pretty cool. It really did work. But there's always been this taint. And it's always this idea, and you can get it lots of places, and a lot of people dismiss it. A lot of people put a title on it, on this stuff, and dismiss it. And I'm gonna use words. Understand, I'm not a scholar here. I'm just an observer, a witness. I'm just trying to figure it out. But I can develop a pretty formidable decoder ring to decrypt things, and I've been trusting in that. And since I have been I think it served me fairly well. Whether or not anybody, although whether or not I communicate that to people, I would apologize that maybe I haven't so well, but I don't think so. I think I've done fairly well to explain even the basics and given you the opportunity again to stand you at the head of your trail, the trail of your question, and say, here, you go down that trail, you're going to find some things, and I always ask you, when you go do that, come back with what you found, because it'll be different. Some will be the same and some will be different. But looking at this historic thing and realizing, as we come to all of us, most of us behind the woodshed, and realize we've been lied to. As I said, we've been duped. We pretty much accept that. But what seems to become a problem is we also lull ourselves into pigeonholing things, and once we see the acceptance of the duping, that's enough. And that's, for me, that's never really been the point, not the case. That historically, when you start researching historically, there's been a common master planner through agents, whether or not we could ever identify them, that I learned to start identifying through their code. The statutory code, so-called international law, the law of special interest, which could be the UN, it could be all these. I told you, don't title them. Just know that they're there and put them in categories of potentials and possibilities, forces and effects, causation, and leave that a mobile and fluid condition. Make certain determinations based on what you know, but make sure you keep it fluid. Why? Is because as I tell you, the protocols of the elders of Zion tell you that you have weaknesses that can be exploited, and there's those out there that have and will and are. And this is where we are today. That something came up. I'll be getting to that story here in a minute, that caused my attention to be turned a whole lot more focused on something I haven't focused. It's something like, I just know it's there. I know it's a force in the world. I've seen the international documents. I talk about the guy, the head of this. We're talking the Vatican here, that force. That I haven't done a lot of discussion. I'm not the scholar that way. I just know that there's a force in the world that's been working, and this agency is key. That I told you when this year, 2015, the starting of the year, when the Pope popped his head out of the little hole, and it looked like a promotion, I said, here it comes, folks. It's a promotion. Well, here we are next month. Really big deals coming up. And I'll just say, I'm going to suggest to you here, I see the gate opening. The gate is just this amorphous idea. It's the gate of hell is what it ends up, the stinking abyss, if you will. Just, you can put any name on it you want. You got to understand it is there. And this is my earnest, if I have a plea, your plea, don't disregard the actual condition you're seeing. Don't bury it underneath a title. We're coming to a time. We've been dealing with it. We've been watching it come on us. And I think the gates of hell are about to open. And I don't want this to sound religious. I want you to tell you that there's real things happening that I've predicted behind the woodshed. Other people have seen it and predicted on it. That I think we're seeing, if I didn't know it before, lots of things were able to come up this week for me on one story, on an anomaly within the story, that I focus most of my attention to pull stuff together to talk today on this, and then I'll try and get through my tabs later. But before I do all of that, I want to make some corrections from last week. I misspoke, and I don't know why I was doing that. I said it right the first time, and then I went into laziness, apparently, and not thinking of listening to myself, that I was using the word I was telling about solar cells and saying I wanted to say silicon. Well, I said it the first time, and every other time I said silicone. So forgive me for that misspeak, and if you will, if it was important to you, don't make the mistake to treat silicon as silicone. So just wanted to treat that. As I was listening, I cringed every time I said the wrong. I don't know why. I guess I got lazy in the articulation, but there it is. So I don't think I was talking about silicone. It was silicon. That also you'll find it as an element. So also the name of the doctor that I spaced was Dr. Weston Price. And he has some very interesting stuff. That was relating to the tuberculosis information, and he was the guy that found that people in indigenous tribes actually had better teeth than people that were fed the feed that they're given by the system. And so I would say research his stuff. Very, very, very informative. Very informative. And it puts you on the track of being self-reliant. It puts you on the track of looking out, as I keep telling you, you look out in your garden, you probably got a lot of the plants that you need to suffice to help you. That you don't need to go too far to at least get some nutrition. As I've been trying to do more, actually. For some reason this year I was able to grow pigweed like crazy. Now that's typically not very edible for most things, but if you focus on it, look at the nutrition, it's like a spinach. And it's it's really nutritious. So I've got this monstrous pigweed plant growing. I'm getting seeds. I make good seed. I'm a good seed maker, I guess. And the animals are good seed eaters, so it's a good thing that I'm a good seed maker. But so I've been growing the natural occurring plants. Lamb's quarter, very nutritious. Little plants, this little weed, they call them weeds. This pigweed turned into be this monster. It's taken up one of the hugel mounds I have. Half of the hugel mounds are now this pigweed, and it's the amaranth. It's of the amaranth family. So the little seed pods are also, if you get enough of them, you can make flour. The point is that there's natural plants around us that we can use for our food, and I think that's also, if you will, our medicine, our mineral nutrition, which I think Weston Price was showing that when you have an understanding of your environment, your literal environment, not the one we're pounded on with, not the political and legal and ecumenical environment, but the actual natural environment, the real one, that you'll find that lots is around you already, that if you start there, like I have purslane that grows like crazy. It's got natural vitamin E. It's the highest vitamin E in a plant you can get. It grows like a dang weed, folks. And it's pretty actually, I'm not into that, actually. I'm not I don't go forage around the garden too much. But this last year I really started doing a little bit more of that. And just the tops of this purslane was great in a chicken salad, chef salad with chicken on it, with other things. It was really pretty tasty. And I was saying, wow, this really is something, what I'm saying is, in derogation to going down and buying food, it can be growing in your backyard, and if you find stuff that grows in your backyard, it grows in your area. And so you're going to have the better opportunity to grow it better and bigger. And so, I've kind of got off the point here, but so Dr. Weston Price found out that people who are self-reliant on the earth and don't adulterate what nature pulls for your area, you're probably going to do a lot better. They did. So moving now back to the more serious point, and again, I don't know what this is going to sound like. I wish I had a better presentation. The subject matter I'm going to touch here actually takes hours and hours and hours to go through. If I was to go through it legitimately, that I'm just going to go through it like I do. I'm just going to be a skipping stone across this. I'll ask you to hopefully pull this stuff together for yourself, and I really ask you, don't disregard these points. I think they are the future of what we're coming to, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't think it. There's no reason for us to be looking the wrong direction. But let me preface this whole thing with a couple points. There's a gentleman way back when called Martin Luther, and he lived between 1483 and 1546, and he was a German friar. He was a priest, and he was a professor. And understand this thing about the word priest, folks. When you see the word priest, you really have to hold a lot of this stuff together for me today, and really open a category of thought. And I really would ask you to research this to perfect it, because if I'm right about what I'm seeing, you're going to need every tool that everything I've been doing behind the woodshed, so you can see dead things, the persons, to see through the transparency, to identify the slightest change in terminology. You're going to need every bit of it. You're going to need every bit of it. So, I don't want it to sound so dire, but this became pressed on me to be super important proof for me that again, like I said, the gate to hell, the gate to the stinking abyss, the unstoppable flow is coming at us. And it's the symbology also behind it is just too much consistent with lots of other studies. That this German friar was a priest. Now priests, remember, those were doing sacrifices. You have to understand what's going on here. This is a priest that the job of a priest is to do a sacrifice. Now, they have a symbolic sacrifice they do now. But understand, that's one of the adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery, we're told. And understand when I talk about some of this that sounds religious or biblical, I don't necessarily agree with the Bible. In fact, I read it a couple times, trying to make sense of it, and it made some sense. It wasn't up until I started doing what I do with the words, with the law word, with these legal words, realizing what the code was in these words, that I went back to the Bible, I started reading it. And there's a lot in it I don't like. Not that I don't like it, I just don't see, I am not being given the tools to understand the inconsistencies that make those parts legitimate. However, you also know, you've heard, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I started looking at this book a little differently, and I said, wow, this is really a legal book, a law book, not legal, but law book, and it is the history book, if you will, to the future even, which was fascinating. I don't understand that, folks. I don't get behind that. But there it was, and I have to leave that category open. That I started to read things in it, and I had to just dismiss a whole lot. It just didn't make sense. But there's things in it that makes a whole lot of sense, like Luke 11:52. And I'll throw out some quotes, but that's just the only ones that I tend to focus on. I don't know. I can't quote you chapter and verse a lot at all. I can go find it, but I couldn't quote. But this one get me because it says, "Woe unto ye lawyers! You hid the key of knowledge, and to those that entered ye hindered." Now, this word "woe" is a big deal word. But I took it more to the point. Look at the world that we have, these attorneys that block your access to the judicial system, blocked your access to the system itself. They hid the key, and then when you confess